I don't really notice any, when I drink a lot of milk, that's very filling. Coconut milk isn't so much. Do I have some friends here now? Oh, good. Morning, everybody. Welcome to our Sparrow Quilt Company Stash Buster series. Just updating Sheila on my coffee preferences. I want to thank you all for coming in today. It is nice to see you all, in theory. And I'm so sorry that I missed you all on Monday. We had a little bit of an emergency with our oldest boy. He started having really bad stomach pain on Saturday. He went into the hospital, and it turned out he needed an appendectomy. So that's how we spent our Monday, was up at the hospital. But he is doing absolutely fine. He'll be back before we know it. He actually works in the back in the shipping department. So very relieved that my boy is fine. Of course, I could not come and yap at you all while I was worried about that boy. So I hope you all understand. We know what it's like when our kids are in pain and having health problems. So you've all been following along while I make the Stay Centered quilt, and that is a free pattern, that we have available on the website. So you can go to sparrowquiltco.com and download that great pattern. I'm going to be honest, when we got to the machine quilting portion of it, I sent it upstairs to the long arming department. It is a bit big, and I am a bit of a wimp when it comes to machine quilting. So I sent that big guy up to Dylan, and you're all laughing at me at the moment because I just told you all last week about how it was such a nice size, not too big. But when it comes down to the machine quilting, I totally wimped out and sent it up to him. So he will take care of that, and then we will be able to move on to the binding process. But I thought today that what I would do is show you some other ways to machine quilt things aside from long arms. A lot of us cannot afford a long arm, nor do we have the space to put one. So finding a solution that works on our domestic machines is pretty important if we want to actually finish our quilts, which is also important. We've invested time and money in the fabric and the making of a beautiful quilt. So we want to make sure that it gets to become a usable item. We all good? Okay. So today I'm going to show you a couple of different things. We have these really great little templates, and I'm going to show that here. Is my screen split, Elle? I'm hoping, can they see this if I'm filming, if I'm showing it here? Is the screen split, or am I only on one? Okay, so I'll give you guys a better look in the second camera in a minute, but essentially what I'm trying to show you here is this is an acrylic template, and it has a design cut into it. So we can use our foot on our quilting machine to actually follow the lines and stitch this design right onto our quilts. Now, I had a sample made up of this sweet little panel the other day. It is a cute little Riley Blake mermaid line that we've got here in the shop. And I thought that would be a nice quilt to show you during this show how to do the machine quilting, because it's not huge and I can easily manage it. But very soon I'm also going to do a tutorial on how to manage a larger quilt under your domestic machine. And I've got some really cool tricks that my friend Stephanie, who designs these templates, taught me about. And I'll share more about that in just a bit. So the template that I've chosen today is some sweet little hearts, and it fits just perfectly into my border. And the way these templates work is they're quite linear in the design, so it's going to work really well just following along on this border. I'll do the templates in the border, and then I'm going to switch to a little bit of free motion, fill in my sashing and fill in the body of the quilt, and then I'll continue doing this template work around in the border and such. So you'll get to watch and follow along as I do that today. So the first thing I need to do is change my foot on my quilting machine, my sewing machine. Right now I just have my regular ankle on and my 1/4 inch foot, and I am going to switch to this little, it's a free motion ruler foot is what it is, and it is going to fit right into the little track. Can we split the screen now so that I can show something over here? Thank you. Thanks for your patience there, guys. I'm just trying to get a good view for you so that you can all see exactly what I'm talking about. Will you let me know when we're split there? Now, I've also put some non-slip grip discs on the back of my little template here, and what that does is helps grab the fabric so that everything moves together as one. We're good there, sweet? Okay, so in case you're wondering, I've got my oldest daughter, Landon, here. She's my little producer and shares your guys' comments and makes sure that I'm on track. Anyways, here is the foot. Can you see, Elle? Can they see this well? All right, so this little foot is going to take the place of my regular foot on my sewing machine, and I'm going to drop it into this little template, and we're just going to follow along and do the stitching with this little foot. But I thought it would be good to give you a little bit of a close-up so that you can see it just a little bit better, what's going on there. Now, to attach this foot, I am going to remove the screw on my sewing machine that holds my presser foot ankle in place. And I am not removing just the foot, which would just be this guy. I've removed the entire ankle, okay? And now I'm going to put this in to my little gadget box. Otherwise, I am very highly likely to misplace that. And then I know exactly where it is. So then the next step is to take this foot. It's going to take the place of the entire ankle, and I'm going to make sure that my needle is in the opening of the foot, and I am going to use this screw to hold it in place, and that is my screw that originally came with my machine. And what you'll notice with these feet, if you've got them, is that the attachment, the hole isn't just a circle, it is more of an oval. So if I need to sneak it up or slip it down, I've got a little bit of play there. And if you're using, say, a thicker batting and your quilt sandwich is a bit taller, you may need to, say, slide that up a little bit on that post that holds your foot. So I just want you to play with the adjustment so that it is as low down as you can comfortably have it so that it will drop into the template well. I'm just going to give that a try and make sure that it fits. There we go. Now that is clamped down really tight, and it is going to prevent me from moving that template well. So I'm going to slide it up just a little bit. Like I mentioned, it's more of an oval, so I'm going to scooch it up just a tiny little bit so that I can move a touch more freely. I am following that groove. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay, that's going to work really well. I'm going to tighten this up now. And we all know right is tight and left is loose. The same applies here. So I got that good and tight. Put that away again so I don't lose it, because I got stuff everywhere. Pardon? What color of thread did you use? Oh, this thread is called amethyst. And it is glide. It is a 40 weight thread, and it is just nice and subtle. I'm not typically a fan of threads that are really strong, especially on little baby quilts. I want something that's going to blend in more so than overpower, and you want to see this cute little panel, not overpower it with thread. So now that I've got my foot on the machine, I'm going to start up in this top corner because I just want to go in a row, so to speak. Now, if this is your first time joining us, we have been doing this Stash Busters series, which is an effort to help quilters use up their stash, because we all have a stash. Maybe not if you're a beginner quilter, but if you've been quilting for any time at all, you probably accumulated scraps or just been in a fabric shop and, oh my word, I love that fabric and I need to have 9 meters of it. And so we all have this abundance of fabric in our stash, and I just find in January we all get a little bit frugal. Maybe we spent too much at Christmas, or whatever our reasons are. Maybe we're just trying to be better people and use up what we've got and not be so much of a consumer. Whatever your reasons are for wanting to use up your stash, that is why this program will be great for you, because you can follow along, get some free patterns, and participate in a bit of a quilt along, which is kind of nice. We get to meet people from all over the world, so I feel very fortunate to get to do this type of thing. And while I'm on the topic, this quilt is going to be the next quilt that we do. I was going to call it almost houndstooth, but now someone wrote on there houndstooth-ish, and I really like that. So I'm going to call this quilt houndstooth-ish because it's not quite houndstooth, but it's close enough for me. Anyways, that is a pattern that we will be starting probably next week, and you will be able to download and follow along. We are making a couple of versions. A few weeks ago, we showed you a fabric line called Yes Please by Riley Blake. We're doing it in that fabric line, and we're also doing it in a line called Curiosities, which is also by Riley Blake. And they're both nice. They've got some good size prints on them. It's really a good block for showing off some of your favorite fabrics, because you don't have to cut up everything really tiny. So you get the opportunity to actually really see those prints quite nicely. All right. Have you heard enough of me yapping yet? Get to it, right? So I am going to kind of center this design over my border. So I have got about a 1/4 inch of border above my design, and I've got about a 1/4 inch of border below my design. So it's fairly centered, and I am starting at the beginning of the template. Now, I always like to bring up my... I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I should have explained a bit more. First, underneath the quilt itself, I have my extension table on. You need a fairly large flat surface, and if you've got a machine that's recessed into your table, that will work beautifully, because you'll have a large flat surface in order to move your quilt along on. If you don't have it recessed into the table, then having an extension table will be really beneficial for you. The throat of our machine just isn't adequate for doing this type of maneuvering of a quilt. You'll find much better results if you're using the templates, if you've got a surface to support them. Now, in order to make it easier to move the quilt around on my surface here, I have polished my table, and I've used this little polish kit. It is a little tub of wax, and you get a couple of little cloths in the kit. So you're going to wet down this little applicator cloth, wet it with a bit of water, take a little bit of polish, and you wipe it all over your surface. And then you're going to take this other little flannel piece and you're going to buff the surface to really smooth it out and slick it up, so to speak. And that will allow your surface just to be nice and smooth, and it helps you move things around more easily. And we all know, if you've ever done any machine quilting, the more help you can get moving those quilts around, the better. So that is a So Very Smooth polish kit, and you can find that at sparrowquiltco.com if you're interested in that. So now that I've explained my setup, I've got, like I said, Glide 40 weight, amethyst in color as my top thread, and I am using the Magna Glide pre-wound bobbins in my bobbin case. The weight of that bobbin is a little bit lighter thread than the top, and I really like that because it helps me get good tension with very little effort. And, well, we all like that. Good tension is a very good thing. Okay, so I'm all lined up, and like I mentioned, I put some of the non-slip discs on the back of my little template here, so those non-slip discs kind of grab the fabric and help move everything along as one sandwich, so to speak. Now I'm taking the beginning of the template right to the outer edge. I'm on the surface of the quilt, but I am just at the edge so that my beginning and my ending will be hidden in the binding. And I'm going to drop my needle and raise my needle. And I'm going to bring up that bobbin, just because that's what I do when I'm long arming, so I'm kind of used to that, but it just helps me lock my threads in place a little bit better. A little bit more maneuvering with these templates, but that's okay because they give me something to follow, and I like that. And I'm just going to go up and down a couple of times locking my stitch. And I do move just a little bit, because if I just stitch in the same spot, it's not really locking onto anything. If I move back and forth, it's more of a true locking stitch, but I'll do about 3 or 4 of those to make sure. Okay, I'm going to lower my chair just a smidge, and I'm going to lower my table just a smidge. I'm going to make sure I got it right. This is a really great table, height adjustable. It's got the electric lift on it, which I love. And it comes with the cutting mat as well, so it's a very multi-purpose type of surface. Now, I want to make sure that my shoulders are not hunched, that I'm just able to sit comfortably. Maybe I'll go down just a little bit more. That feels really good. And once I'm all in place, I'm going to go ahead and start the stitching. Now, I like to kind of roll things in over here so that there's no drag and pulling there. Just waving at some people up front there. We are in a real life quilt shop. I find if I roll things up, then they can't drag and give me trouble. Now I have got my speed set to about middle of the road, and then when I sew, I usually try to just full speed so that I'm not raising and lowering my speed. I just want to try and keep as consistent of a speed as I can. And sometimes maneuvering these templates, you'll find it takes a little bit of practice, and that's okay. What I love about baby quilts is that babies don't judge. And I am just going to make my way around these precious little hearts. And try really hard not to mess with my speed, because it's easy to do. There. Now I've reached the end of the template, so what I have to do now is swing it around. And I think I'll trim those threads so that they don't keep getting in my way, because holy moly, I've got like 8 feet of them here. I'll trim that away. Now, did we have any questions at all there, Landon? Extension tables. Oh, what is that website? I'm going to have to look it up, guys. You can order them online. There is a company that makes them, and they are clear acrylic, and you can get them to be a really nice size, but the website name is not coming to me at the moment. If you think of it, Al, or if you happen to look it up, maybe we can share it. So now that I've swung this around, what I'm going to do is keep the bottom edge of my template lined up with my border, because the template shifts just a little bit. Remember when I started, I said I was about 1/4 inch from the top and 1/4 inch from the bottom. When I swing it around the second time, it comes a little bit higher. So I'm just going to try and keep straight by using my border. And that's going to help me stay on a straight line so that my design doesn't start to kind of go on an angle. What I did notice, I just peeked at the back there, when I slowed down, my tension went a little bit wonky. So I want to really try hard to keep the same speed when I'm sewing. And a good bit of advice that Stephanie shared with me is when she is sewing, so our foot is normally on our machine pedal like this. Steph turns hers around like this. So when she hits it, there's only on and off. There's no faster or slower. You just only have that one option. So I really like that advice, because it helps us keep our speed consistent, which is evidently very important. We'll see it in our stitches. Because if you start sewing slower and moving your fabric at the same speed, then your stitches get really long and they're just a little bit compromised. So do your best to keep a nice steady speed. All right, here we go again. I am going to take a a second turn at this template here. And these little hearts are really cute. All right, so someone has just joined and they're asking what kind of templates we're using. These are called domestic quilting templates, and they are designed to give you a free motion type look with the convenience of a template, which keeps you consistent. Landon, would you maybe grab a second template for me so that I can just kind of show it? Yeah, just another one that I can show. So I've reached the end, and what's important to do is to make sure that your needle stays down, it holds your place. If your needle is up, then you can move everything around and you'll get big funny gaps and big long stitches again. So I keep my needle down and it keeps my quilt in place. And my template was like that, and I've just swung it around. Now, when you're looking for these templates on the website, let's leave it on there. It might be easier to see. Oh. It's gone. It has a blue backing, which makes it a little bit easier to see. Anyways, this is the design that I'm using today. Which camera is better? Side? Hopefully you can see that fairly well. These are the mini domestic templates, and they require the smaller 1/4 inch foot. And there is also a larger size, which require a 1/2 inch foot. And all that means is that the foot itself is a 1/4 inch wide. So this groove across here is a 1/4 inch wide. The larger ones have a 1/2 inch groove, and so it's just a little bit wider. The templates themselves are bigger. These mini templates are a great starting point. If you've got a smaller throat of machine, then the mini templates are your best option. They come in a lot more designs as well, the mini guys. Eileen is asking, did I baste? And yes, I did, Eileen. I was crawling around on the floor this morning with my spray baste. I did not use pins. I just sprayed really quickly and I put all my 3 layers together. So I just want you all to know how much I love you, that I actually went back to basting a quilt on my hands and knees so that I could show you all how this works. So again, I have flipped my template and I'm using that border. It just happens that that works out to keep me on the straight and narrow. If you don't have a border on your quilt, then you can just draw a chalk line, and that will give you something to sort of stay lined up with, which is a good thing. We don't want our design to start going a little bit off track. Pardon me. All right, here we go. We're going to do the next little section. I'm trying really hard to be smooth as I enter that heart. It's not always perfect, but that's okay. I'm not perfect either. I'm not striving for perfection. I'm striving for a finished quilt that I can use. I feel pretty strongly about that, and I know you guys have heard me yapping about it in the past. If you're not quilting for show, then don't worry about perfection. I always want to encourage you to do the best job that you possibly can, but I am not ever going to rip out stitching from a quilt unless it is compromising the quality of it. If it's just a small mistake, I'm okay with that. I'm going to live with that because I myself am not perfect, and I don't expect my quilts to be perfect either. All right, so I've swung my template around again, and I'm going to give it another go. Oh, I'm getting braver now. You can hear my speed coming up. Just make my way down that little groove, slip up into this heart, back out, and out to the end. Now, if you've just joined us and you have the domestic templates and you're struggling, I hope that you are watching, because there is some tricks to getting this working a little bit better. I had one quilter write, and her foot was down so tight that she couldn't move anything. And like I pointed out a little bit earlier, the hole on your foot is an oval, so you can move it up and down on that stem a little bit. If it's clamped down too tight, then I want you to scoot it up on the post a little bit to relieve the pressure. Now, Linda is asking what type of machine I am using. My machine is a Janome 6500. I have had it at least 10 years. I love this machine. I will never get rid of it. It is so sturdy. It's sewn through absolutely everything, like layers and layers of denim, sequins, all of it. This machine is amazing. I love it. Okay, so I've reached the end of this now. I'm going to swing it around and we're going to come back the other way once more. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm keeping the edge of my template lined up with that border to make sure that I am staying nice and straight. Scoot into that heart, follow around the edge of it, down the little track to the next heart, and back out again. All right, and it stops with my needle down. I'm going to swing this around, line up my bottom edge with the border, and give it another go. Well, I'm making good progress. I'm nearly at the end again. Swing that once more. Again, I'm lined up. And here I go. Stitch a little bit faster. I don't want any toenail catcher stitches. You know, you're sleeping under the covers and that thread grabs your toenail. You don't want any of that. All right. So I'm going to have a peek at the back. Should we do it? Should we do it? It's looking pretty good. I'm going to tighten up my tension a smidge. I can see a few dots on the back. I'm not really too worried about that. That happens a lot, and if you just throw it in the wash, your fabrics will shrink. I don't pre-wash my fabrics, so when those fabrics shrink up, they kind of draw the thread in, and that usually fixes those holes on the back. If I have eyelashes on the back, that's another story. That may not stay in the quilt very well, so those I tend to pull out and restitch. All right, I've swung it around again, lined up with my border. Stop with my needle down. Now, although these are called free motion templates, we are following a line. So it's not true free motion, but it's better free motion than I can do just by myself. So I'm still willing to call it that, even if I'm cheating just a little bit. They're like having training wheels on your bike. Helps you get that nice accurate design. So specific to the bigger templates. All right. Stickies. Sure. Okay. So hold it up for me again, please. Someone's asked with the bigger templates, so there's some that are larger, should you have your feed dogs up or down and any tips? So always drop your feed dogs. And, well, I don't want to say always, because you know what? Sometimes if I have something really large and I'm having trouble maneuvering it, I will actually keep my feed dogs up. But if you feel like they're interfering, then of course drop them down. But sometimes they do help you move things around. This foot doesn't clamp down like your presser foot does, so you still have the freedom to move things very easily. Tips, I would suggest those grip dots on the back, absolutely. They grip everything and move it all together. You really want to almost make the template part of the quilt sandwich. You're moving it all together at the same time. And so those larger templates might require more discs, more of those non-slip discs on the back to make sure that everything flows smoothly. Otherwise, tips, practice on a couple of your ugliest fat quarters before you begin on your actual quilt. Make yourself a little quilt sandwich that you can play on, and just give yourself a couple of minutes to get used to the maneuvering of everything. You might already be used to free motion quilting, but free motion quilting within a little track is a little bit different. And sometimes it seems like the foot doesn't quite fit. Just be patient, you know, just be patient and do your best to wiggle it into those little spots as best you can. You've probably noticed when I go into the opening of these little hearts that it feels a bit tight. I just pause, take, you know, just slowly, patiently try to work it in there, and it goes. All right. So I've swung my template once more, I've lined up along my border, and I am ready to stitch this next little section. Now, where is everybody watching from today? I love to hear where everybody is. Yes, Lana just reminded me about the table polish that I was telling you about at the beginning. It smooths out our table and makes it easier to move our quilt over that surface. My table has just a little bit of a texture to it. It doesn't stop things from moving, but when you polish it, it really does make the quilt move easier. Did I start already? Oh, well. Okay. So here I go again. Into the heart, around, back out again. In my head, I'm saying down the hallway. It's not a hallway, but it feels like a hallway to the next heart. And back out. Okay, stop with your needle down. Now it's starting to drag a little bit on that side, so I am just going to bring it up so that I'm not trying to fight that pull of the fabric over the far end of the table. And again, I have swung my template around and my border seam continues along here, so I'm going to make sure that I am straight by eyeballing how it looks along that border. Oops, slow down, girl. Okay. Now this will be our last little run of the template. And then I will tie that off with some locking stitches. There we go. I'm just going to stitch towards the edge of the quilt so that I can do my locking stitches at the outer edge. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I like to do my starts and stops in that last little 1/4 inch. It hides them in my binding. If I'm not able to do that, if I'm quilting in the middle of the quilt, I don't really worry about it. Sometimes I'll hide it in a seam, but babies don't judge your starts and stops. They're not going to care if they can see a tiny little locking stitch on the surface of the quilt. And yes, I am moving that just a little bit. I don't just stay in one spot. Okay, we're going to raise that needle, move everything off to the side. I'm going to use my cute little fox scissors to trim my threads. Good. All right. So, do we still have the other camera here? Oh, okay. All right. So I'm going to try and show you here my stitching in the border. You can see it is just some sweet little hearts traveling along and a little ribbon between them. It is by no means perfect, but that is okay. I'm not after perfection. I am after the quilt. Now, the good thing about this little foot here is that I can still use it for free motion quilting. There is a free motion foot for this machine, but I am just going to keep using the one I've got on here right now. I'm going to move into the body of the quilt, and I'm going to do a little S. Matt calls it ribbon candy, back and forth in this little sashing here. And then I'm going to move down here, do a little bit of outline quilting, and then I might do just some loops and swirls in the background. In order to make that job a little bit easier, today I'm going to use my 8-inch quilting hoop. Now these quilting hoops are really super awesome. Again, you want to make sure that you have got your extension table on your machine so that you've got a large flat surface, or if your machine recesses into your table, you're going to drop it down into place. And again, you're going to polish up your surface so that things move very easily. On the back of the hoop, it doesn't actually attach to the quilt. It just has this non-slip type of fabric on the back. So when I move this hoop, everything just moves with it. I think it might be magic. I don't know why it works so well, but it just has this non-slip fabric on the back. And there's this nice little opening here that I can slide underneath my machine foot. If you are struggling to get that under there, you might have to remove the screw and remove your foot and then place the hoop under and reattach the foot. And yeah, we did notice that mine is just too wide and it won't actually fit through there. I have, between the foot and the screw, it just doesn't get through. So I have to remove my foot, put the hoop in, and then put the foot back on. It takes me 30 seconds. It's really not that hard of a job to do. So again, I'm going to just kind of roll this up so that I don't have any drag on this side of the machine. I did press this morning. Honestly, I really did. Normally I don't. But what I'm going to do now, I think what I'll do first is just stitch in this ditch along the border. And that's just going to keep everything in place for me. I better drop that. Raise that up again. Bring up my bobbin. And I'm going to do a couple of tiny locking stitches. Now, if you're just joining us, this is the Stash Buster series, and normally we are working on piecing a quilt. The quilt that we have been working on has to go upstairs to be long-armed, so I thought I would take this opportunity to show you some ways of domestic quilting that will make your job easier, because not everybody has a long-arm machine or access to one. Although if you are local, you're welcome to come in and take our class and rent our long arms upstairs. That is a lot of fun. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we actually stream from upstairs so you can see real live quilts being quilted, which is pretty cool. So Laura is asking, why hoops versus gloves? You know, I used to love my gloves, Laura. I really did. But what I find is that my hands cramp up. The older I get, the less strength I have in my hands, and I kind of deserve it. When I first met my mother-in-law, one of the first things she did is hand me a jar and say, could you open this for me? And I was like you can't open a jar. Well, I was 19 years old at the time, and now that I'm older, my hands are getting weaker. So I'm sorry, Flo, for ever doubting you. I deserve this weak hands. I cannot grip things for a long period of time. My hands cramp up and they become very tingly. So this is a nice solution because I don't have to death grip the quilt, and it just moves things around so beautifully. All right, so I've locked in my stitches there, and I'm just going to stitch in this ditch as best I can. Now, the good thing is that the quilt itself isn't actually hooped. So when I get to the end of the area that I'm quilting in, I'm just going to lift the hoop and reposition it. So you'll see that in just a minute here. I've got it moved as far forward as I can to give myself the maximum amount of stitchable space there. Shocking to me the amount of focus this requires. All right, so I've reached the bottom of the hoop. I really can't stitch any further. I'm just going to lift it, bring it towards me, and lay it back down. It's that simple. But it just moves the fabric and the whole quilt sandwich along very, very nicely. Lift again, drop it back down. Can you hear me going faster? You're getting braver now, aren't I? Want to make sure that everything's nice and flat, and because I spray basted, everything is nice and flat underneath. I do recommend basting still while you're using this method. Okay, a couple of tiny locking stitches back and forth, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Raise my needle. And I'm just going to trim those threads.
Laura says she always goes faster.
We get braver, don't we? Start getting a little reckless. Okay, so now that I have that all in place, now I can go back and do a ribbon candy type design. And the reason that I stitched in the ditch first is because when I do ribbon candy, it shifts things slightly, and I would no longer have that nice straight border that was sewn on there, so we don't want to ruin the piecing that we've done. And that's why I have chosen to stitch in the ditch there. I'm going to start up in my corner again. That was not good. Why did that happen? All right, we better check on the bobbin. This is real life sewing, kids. My needle is hitting something on the down swing. So let's see what's going on. Pardon me while I troubleshoot here. Yeah, sure. That's really strange. Why is it hitting? Thanks for your patience, guys. I might just change my needle here. I'm not sure what is causing this. But I certainly don't want my needle hitting on the way down. Landon is showing you the quilting hoops there. Nice close-up while I try and sort this baby out. Oh, let's drop that. Okay. So, my presser foot was not lowered. That was causing me some trouble. But I'm just going to re-thread. So that actually solves a question for me. I did have a quilter call me, and she was struggling one day, saying that this was coming down and bumping the foot. So maybe her presser foot hadn't been lowered, because my needle cannot go all the way down until my presser foot is in the lowered position. So, check out the big brain on Bradie.
Are you able to do swirls with the hoop?
Oh, I think so. I will try to do some in a minute here, because swirls are pretty much the only thing I'm capable of. I love me some swirls. And feathers. I'm not as good at feathers, though. Those elusive feathers, everybody wants them. Well, I shouldn't generalize everybody, but... Oh no, my needle was hitting something in the bobbin area. I was not hitting the hoop there. My machine, something wasn't right inside of it, and the needle was not descending properly. I don't think my needle was up in the shaft as high as it should have been, because once I took it out and put it back in, we were fine. So that was probably my...
What size of needle are you using?
That is a great question. When I am machine quilting, I will use a 14 or a 16. On the long arms, it's a whole different story. When I am piecing, I will use an 11, and I use a 50 weight thread for piecing. So today I have a 40 weight thread, and I believe this is a 14 needle. If the thread you're using is shredding or breaking, I want you to go up a size to that 16. The needle itself gets a little bit bigger, but if your thread is bigger, then a larger needle is required for that bigger thread. I wouldn't probably go up to an 18 unless I was going to a really thick thread, like say a 30 or a 12, maybe a 12 for an 18. But the thicker your thread, the bigger a needle you need in order for that thread to be able to travel through the eye of the needle. So the smaller the number, the smaller your needle. All right, so let's get this back underneath the foot, and we'll bring. What's that? Oh, maybe we should give away some table polish, or that's what we'll do. So thank you for that reminder, Landon. We are going to give away a prize like we always do. So here's how you're going to be entered for the prize. You're going to share this video with your Facebook friends. So if you're watching the video, you can see below it, there's 3 links. There's the like, there's the comment link, and then there's share on the right-hand side. So go ahead and share the video. And once you've done so, you will be entered into the drawing. And we will give away, let's give away 3 of these today. 3 sets of table polish, okay? So share that video, and that will give you an entry into the prize. Now, if you happen to be watching this video on YouTube, I want to remind you to go ahead and yes, thank you. I want to go ahead and remind you to like us here on YouTube and follow our channel, or subscribe to our channel. That's the word I'm after. Okay. So there is a series of events that has to happen here. We're going to lower the foot, then lower the needle, and then we will be stitching properly. But my bobbin didn't come up. See, guys, everybody has trouble. Hi. Hi, honey. Oh, there is a little cutie up front there. All right, I got plenty of bobbin there. This should be working. I always do like to bring it up just to make sure that it is not getting all nested up under the quilt. Drop your foot first. Lower your needle. Oh, my needle's not threaded. It's not going to do nothing. Jeez. Now where have I put my scissors? Yes, it does. My surface is textured, and I like to put it on there because it just kind of smooths it out. It doesn't, there's no abrasive to it at all. It's just a wax, but it just makes that surface smoother and easier to move your quilt on. All right, I'll get it right here yet, guys. And even us so-called experts have our moments, don't we? At least I'm not throwing my coffee on the ground today. Were you guys watching last week? I had one show that was just, oh my word, I was a hot mess. I almost knocked over the quilt stand behind me. I almost fell off my chair. I dropped my coffee on the floor. I can't even, oh, and I screwed up the quilt. I sewed the rows together wrong. I was a real going concern that day. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple of locking stitches. And like I mentioned earlier, I am actually moving just a tiny little bit. I don't like to just stitch in one spot. It doesn't feel like it's locking on to anything. I prefer to move it just a tiny little bit. Then I'm going to trim this down, not completely off, but just trim it down a little bit so that it doesn't tangle me up. Okay, now I am going to go ahead and do a ribbon candy type of design in this little blue sashing here. And I'm just going back and forth. I'm trying to keep the same sort of spacing each time. I won't claim it's perfect, but these little multicolored spaces here, I'm trying to kind of use them as my spacing guide. I like to use something that's already in the quilt to help me with my spacing, and then it's better than pre-marking or using a ruler or something like that. So I've kind of reached the end of my quiltable space here. I'm just going to lift my hoop, bring it towards me, and now I've got more space available. Now these hoops come in 2 sizes. There's an 8 and an 11, or you can get the combo of both. Today I am using the 8-inch hoop. My machine is big enough that I could use the 11, but I decided just to try out this one today. And what I can tell you is how good my hands feel when I'm doing this. I don't have to death grip anything. And I'm able to leave everything nice and flat, so I'm less at risk for getting pleats, tucks, and wrinkles in the back of my quilt. I don't know what it is about those things. Nobody likes them. Nobody wants pleats, tucks, or wrinkles. And like I mentioned earlier, I've already stitched in the ditch along that border, so that's going to keep my border nice and straight while I'm doing this back and forth type of design. We don't want to piece a straight border and then have it be distorted by the quilting. That is very undesirable. Although, like I mentioned earlier, babies don't judge. They just want to be warm. This is actually looking pretty good. I'm really happy with this ribbon candy design on here today. All right. So if you're just joining us again, this is the Stash Buster series. As you can see, I'm working on some machine quilting today. What we normally have is a free pattern, and I am quilting and offering tips and tricks. Because my quilt needs to be quilted still yet, I can't do the binding. So we are working on the machine quilting, and I'm just showing you a couple of different ways that you can work on machine quilting on your domestic machine at home, as I recognize that not everybody has access to a long arm machine. So tomorrow, being Thursday, we will be streaming live from upstairs where the long arm quilting machines are. It's our nephew Dylan who runs that upstairs, and we also have some renters who will come and rent the other long arm machines. So you can tune in and watch that all day. Maybe you could even see your own quilt being quilted. Will table polish, Mary's asking, will table polish work on clear plastic extension tables? And it absolutely will. Absolutely. It works on pretty much any surface. We also have a sit-down long arm, and it has got a nice big table, lots of texture to that table. It works really nice on there. Really, really nice. I'm happy with this amethyst colored thread, even on this like robin egg blue. It's still very, very pretty on here. And Judith has asked, what spray to keep the layers together? I used one called 505. You can get it at most quilt shops, or I know Fabricland sells it, probably Joann's if you're in the States. Any quilt shop should carry it. I even have some now because I'm actually a real quilt shop now. For a long time, we were a long arm rental studio. We didn't even sell fabric. Well, we always sold backing fabrics and batting. But now we've actually got real fabric. So that is exciting for me. All right. So I have just kind of finished up my design in the seam, and now I am just going to do a couple of tiny locking stitches. Oh, that little man up front is so cute. We were in a restaurant the other day, and I was tickling this small child beside me who was an absolute stranger to me. Matt's sure I'm losing my mind. Again, I raised my foot. I just keep doing the same thing, you guys. I don't learn. Oh, well. As long as my machine doesn't die, I hope we should be okay. All right, so I'm going to give you a little tiny peek at my ribbon candy, and hopefully, oh, it looks awesome on the back. My tension is beautiful. Do we have a view from this camera here, Elle? Oh, I'm really happy with that. Yay. I don't even have dots. Not even dots. And you know what? The more I look at the other ones, sometimes it seems like we have dots on the back, but if you look really closely, it's really just the shadow of the hole. So now that I look closer, and my eye doctor says I don't need bifocals, I say he's a liar. It's more just the shadow. It isn't actually my top thread showing on the back. So before you get too worked up about your tension being off, have a really close look. If I run my finger along it and I can feel like a tick, 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 then I know my top thread is showing on the back. But this time I can't, so I think we're good. Are we good on this camera here? Okay. So you... Closer to my machine. Here I'm showing you the tension on the back is really, really nice. I'm very happy with it. And there I just want to show you the ribbon candy that I was doing with my quilting hoop. The advantage of the hoop is that I don't have to clench the fabric with my hands. I can work with a bigger area at one shot. I think, sorry Sheila, I think Alex is on the phone. Still bossy, even while she's on camera. So I'm really happy with that ribbon candy. I think that turned out really well. I'm working my way down the quilt, so I'm just going to continue into the body here, and then I will worry about the side borders of the quilt after I have done the body. So let's go ahead and push that back underneath. I was going to go ahead and outline all of this, but that feels like a lot of work. So I think what I'm going to do is maybe just go into some swirls. Sounds like you guys are swirl fans too, so let's go ahead and do that. Swirls are always pretty, and they do tend to be a bit more feminine. So I'm going to do them on this cutie little girly quilt. But first what I'm going to do, this isn't really a pieced sashing, but I do want it to stay straight. So I'm going to stitch in the ditch, although it is just part of the print. I'm just going to stitch along that line there, even if it isn't actually a seam. And let's drop our presser foot so we don't wreck our machine again. I'll tell you, this machine has really... Oh, we have another Judith asking a question. Judith is asking what the circle is that I'm using, and it is my quilting hoop, Judith. It allows me to do free motion quilting on my machine without having to clench the fabric with my hands. It sort of takes the place of machingers when we use our quilting gloves. This has a non-slip type of fabric on the back, and it just grabs the fabric and it makes everything move all together, and I'm pretty sure there's a little bit of magic in it because it just works so well. All right, so we are going to do this straight line first. Linda is asking what the hoop size is. This one is the 8. There's also an 11, which does fit on my machine, but I just thought today I would use the 8 just so I could get a sense of how well it works. I've always used the 11, but today I'm jumping out of my box today. Okay, here we go. We're going to go along this little straight line here. And my line is not perfectly straight, but that is okay. My thread pretty much matches that background color of the panel. So I'm not too worried about perfection. As you guys know, I've said it a million times. People aren't perfect. Why should quilts be perfect? I'm not quilting for show. I'm quilting for samples in my store. I'm quilting for the people that I love. I just want to get quilts finished so I don't paralyze myself to the point of perfection. Maxine is asking, does 505 spray gunk up your needle? And I'm sure it can. I don't use a lot of it. I don't like smelly stuff. So I just kind of sprayed it lightly and just pressed everything together. I'm also quilting it right away. If you anticipate your project being left for a longer period of time, you might need more spray, but I found that it stuck very well. And I was able to lift it and reposition it. I'm very happy with the spray, and I don't notice any gunking up just yet. I suspect you might get some thread breakage. Yes. Yeah. Landon is saying that if your quilt was bigger and it was exposed to more 505 throughout the process, you know, it is entirely possible that it would gunk up your needle. If you started seeing breakage or your thread shredding, it might be a good idea just to maybe clean your needle with maybe some sort of wipe, or just put a fresh needle in. I am a big fan of changing my needle anytime I start having trouble. Needles aren't that expensive. I think it's worth it to just put a new one in to avoid any possible trouble. So you can see it just moves things along really, really well for me. I'm not clenching the fabric. When I need to reposition, I just pull the hoop towards myself, lay it back down. It's not actually attached to the fabric in any way, shape, or form, so it's very simple to just lift it and reposition it. Oops. Almost at the end here. There we go. All right, now I have got that nice and straight. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to sever my thread. I'm just going to kind of take off from here and do a little bit of free motion quilting. So try not to laugh too hard, okay? Here we go. So I'm going to do some swirls, but I don't want to do them painfully small so that I'm here for 3 days quilting this quilt that's like 33 inches square. I want to try and do them a big enough size that I can do this in a timely manner. All right, you ready? Here we go. So I'm just doing tiny kind of snails. And we're swirling in and back out. And I am doing kind of some neat little flamey petal things here. That's the fun thing about domestic quilting is you are not limited by anything but your own imagination. And I'm a big fan of echoing. If I get stuck, I'll just echo around something to get my way back out. Now I'm starting to feel like I'm a little bit...
Pause for 1 second. I'm going to do a close-up.
Okay. I'm a little bit done filling that space, so now I'm going to reposition my hoop so that I can move over just a little bit. I'm already feeling like this is a little bit small, so I'm going to try and make it a little bit bigger. And I am giving myself permission to change. It doesn't all have to be exactly the same. What kind of foot is on my machine, Betty is asking. So I have the mini ruler foot on my machine that I was using with my domestic templates. It's a ruler foot that just follows this groove in this template, but because it still allows me to move the quilt freely, I didn't bother changing it. I could have put on my true free motion foot for this machine, but this one works just fine, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. All right, let's see if we can get... Does 505 wash out? That's a great question, Debbie. My understanding is that it does. And I would especially wash it if it was a baby quilt going to a brand new babe. You don't want them, I don't know, having that residue or whatever in their little lives. So I would wash it before I passed it along. But yes, my understanding is that it does. I don't use it very often. I don't do domestic quilting very often. So I'm really stretching my abilities here. Ooh-wee. So these are just snails or cinnamon buns or whatever you want to call them, depending on how hungry you are at the moment. And I love swirls because you can use them as a base for putting other stuff on there. Now, I'm starting to get this little bit of quilt building up on the inside here. So I am just going to start rolling that on the inside there so that I can continue on with my quilting. We're going to echo back out. Oh, slow down, girl. And remember that keeping your speed consistent is going to help you keep your tension good on the back. because we all want good tension. We better look. It's looking good. It's looking good. I'm happy with that. It's just positioned awkwardly, so I cannot show you at the moment. I'm going to just keep making my way across and filling in the space. And I'm just loving this hoop. It's so much easier on my hands than the gloves are. Now I'm quilting towards myself, which feels a little bit backwards. It might feel a little bit easier if I were to start each row this way and work this way. But I was down here and I didn't want to cut my thread. I was being a lazy bum. So it is what it is, but it's turning out pretty darn good, I gotta say. Okay, so my thread just broke. Give me a moment to fix that up. Move this big guy out of the way. There we go. Maybe my bobbin's out. Lots of bobbin. I'm sorry, what? So if you want to watch this again later, you can check us out on YouTube, or you can come back to the Facebook page and you can watch the replay later. If you are watching us on YouTube, please remember to subscribe to our channel. And if you are watching us on Facebook, please remember to like us, like our page, because we are always sharing free patterns and tutorials to help make your life a little bit easier so that you can enjoy your sewing. It's always more enjoyable when we know what we're doing. So I noticed that my thread is actually shredded a little bit, so I'm going to pull all that shredded stuff through and get it out of my life. If I can untangle it from my needle. But I don't want to keep stitching with some thread that's shredded because it's just going to break again. And these good old eyes of mine just aren't the same, so I tell you, my needle threader is a lifesaver these days. There we go. Okay, so because my thread broke, where I left off, I'm going to go back a couple of stitches. I'll bring up my bobbin and I want to overstitch those last couple of stitches to make sure that they stay in, as well as my new stitches are going to stay in. That is a thing that I always do on the long arm, is to make sure to secure the old as well as the new. So there, I've just pulled up my bobbin. And I am going to go back a couple of stitches. And then I'm going to go forward. I went back 2, and now I'm going to go forward 2. And like I said, I like to lock my stitches back and forth several times instead of staying in one place. It locks a little bit better. Okay, here we go again. That's tricky. Something went wrong there and it didn't quite pick up, and then it did. So I don't know. I'll have to go back in and repair that. Okay, we got a question here. Just a second. Sabrina says, if I buy the hoops, is there anything else I need to get started? So Sabrina, you definitely want to have an extension table. You need a larger surface. The throat of your machine is not really adequate to balance the hoops. Oh, I forgot to put my hoop back on. That's okay, I gotta go back and repair this. And I would also suggest using the polish to polish your table to make it smoother and make sure that your quilt is gonna move nice and easy when you are stitching. Just cutting my thread so I can put my hoop back on and I don't have to grab the fabric and distort everything. There we go. Okay. Sorry? Oh, yeah, like I said, the hoops, the polish, and a free motion quilting foot. You definitely will need a foot that allows the fabric to move freely. You don't want to use it with a regular presser foot that clamps down on the fabric. You need to be able to move things around nice and freely. You want to be able to drop your feed dogs. But no, other than that, it is pretty simple to get started. Designs, you want designs in your mind as well. And I look at a lot of books when I need some free motion designs, or I default to my swirls that I just put on everything because it's pretty much all I can quilt. I can get a bit more creative if I have to, or I usually do stuff on the long arm with pantographs, but Mary says polish, like furniture polish. This is a polish that we sell on the website at sparrowquiltco.com. It's called So Very Smooth Polish Kit, and it's just a little tub of polish, and it comes with instructions on how to apply it onto your table to give you a smooth, slippery surface so that you can maneuver your quilt and move things more easily. All right. So I'm starting to feel a little bit hungry, so these are now becoming cinnamon buns. And I am just swirling my way in. And what I like about swirls is you can either give them a round inside or you can spike it. You can cross them over. You can choose not to. You can do whatever you want because it's your quilt and I give you permission. Now, this amethyst thread is about to get set on fire because it just broke again. That's okay. This is real life quilting. This is how it goes sometimes. We're going to go back to where we were. We're going to drop our presser foot because we keep learning the same lessons here today. Pull up that bobbin. Do a couple of tiny locking stitches. Is it down? Yes. Back two, forward two, and then remember to trim your threads because they will grab you and tangle you up. They turn into an octopus, I'm fairly certain. Now I'm almost at the far end, so that is a good thing. I suspect because I'm moving backwards, that's also part of my thread breakage issue. So my further rows I'm going to do coming towards myself and see if that helps. That can be a concern on the long arm as well. Trying to keep that speed nice and consistent so that my stitches stay nice and even. I have no source of regulation on here. I am just regulating the stitches myself with my speed. The speed I'm driving and the speed that I'm moving things along. Now, have you all shared this video? That's how you're going to be entered to win the table polish that I told you about. I'm going to give away 3 sets of those, so go ahead and share this video so that you can be entered into the draw. Teresa says, I cannot lower my feed dogs. Do I need a different foot then? You would still need some sort of free motion foot, and this isn't the actual free motion foot that comes with my machine. It is the free motion templates foot, and it would work on your machine. You can still do free motion quilting with your feed dogs up, I find sometimes it helps me move things along, but sometimes it's a hindrance as well. I would say experiment a little bit, Teresa, and see what you can get away with. Does thread expire? Asks Laura. That is a great question. In my opinion, it's based on the type of thread it is. Polyester seems to have a very long lifespan. It's not affected by light or humidity. Cotton, however, is a bit more temperamental, I'm going to say. One of my very first long arm renters that came to the shop had made a quilt out of her grandmother's house dresses, and so she had brought some cotton thread on a wooden spool that Grandma had given her, and I know that cotton is more troublesome. It breaks more frequently. It's more linty. I never ever use it except when I'm piecing. I put it on the insides, but I don't ever top stitch with cotton. But because of the circumstances, I was willing to try and make it work. So we put this on wooden spool. I want to reiterate that part. So it's not new thread. We had 6 thread breaks in about the first 12 inches of the quilt. And that is probably the most frustrating thing that a quilter can experience. You've seen me here have my thread break 3 times, and I'm holding it together fairly well, but to be honest, I'm getting a little bit hot. Just because it's frustrating, it gets to you a little bit. We want to use trouble-free thread that doesn't give us issues, so yes, I would say the cotton thread does have a lifespan. If you are experiencing a lot of breakage with cotton thread, you can use there's a product that you can use. It's like a silicone, and you can apply it to your thread, and it's supposed to make it more supple. I've also been told that you can put it in the freezer overnight, and that will help re-moisturize it. I don't bother. I just use polyester. It gives my quilts a nice shine. It's pretty, it runs well, and it gives me very little breakage. Obviously not today, but for the most part, it usually does. So that is my advice to you, is find a thread that your machine does like and stick with that. If you are a cotton purist and you must use cotton, then remember that you just need to be a bit more patient, because it will test you. That is for sure. I hope that answered your question. All right, so now I'm going to start quilting back towards myself, and I'm hoping that that helps my breakage issues. What I love about this hoop is that I don't have to unhoop anything. I can just lift it and reposition it. And I'm starting to feel just a little bit of resistance in here, so I'm just going to roll this up to make sure that things are able to move a little bit easier. And I can just lift my hoop and reposition it. So that shredded a little bit, but it didn't break. I'm just going to go back over it. Ooh. All right, I'm starting to get a little bit speedy. I need to slow down because I'm getting a little bit sloppy as well. So I want to make sure this is pretty. I don't want to get, I don't want my quilting to get ugly. At the same time, I still don't want to go too slow either. It's really a bit of an experiment each time, you know? You just have to keep working at your driving speed and the speed that you're moving your hands. And I really truly believe that a little bit of practice every day adds up and goes a long way. I had another little thread break over here, so I'm just restitching that. I'm not too worried about if my lines cross. I'm not submitting this to a quilt show. It's my quilt. I'm going to do what I want with it, and I give you permission to do the same thing with yours. You want to cross those lines over, you go right ahead. Don't you let the quilt police ruin your day. So I think that did go a little bit better coming back this direction. So I might be smart to keep the bulk of my stitching coming towards myself. So here's what I'm going to do to get myself back there. I don't want to cut my thread again. I'm just going to echo around my swirls and get myself back there. Now, as soon as I started going backwards, my thread broke. So I really do think that the direction I'm going has a lot to do with my breakage. Oh, it's looking good on the back too, guys. Okay, we're going to lift that needle and move back over. Maureen is asking what type of machine I'm using. Today I've got my good old Janome 6500. I've had this machine probably 10 years or so, and it is a really strong, sturdy machine. It is still my favorite. I've got a brand new machine at home, but I still do really love this one. Okay, so I'm going to start a new stitching line. My going backwards and echoing everything did not work. My thread shredded and broke. So I am going to continue making my rows come towards me versus going back the opposite way. It appears to me that that is going to prevent that breakage. All right, my foot is down. I'm going to bring up that bobbin. It's still tied in over here, so it's not coming up. I'm just going to snip it over here. And that will free it up to come up to the surface. There we go. Again, I can see signs that my thread is shredding, so I'm going to go ahead and just pull off maybe a meter rather than try and start stitching with some thread that is a little bit compromised, because it's just going to break again. And I really don't want to be cursing on camera in front of you all. It's not very polite. But, so hopefully you've all shared this video so that you can be entered in the draw to win some table polish for your sewing machine and your extension table. That's our So Very Smooth polish. It's a little kit that you can use to polish up your sewing surface and make your quilt move much easier. And you're going to be entered into the draw by sharing this video. So you're just going to look for the link underneath the video that says share, and you'll go ahead and share that with all your friends. Now, if you're just joining us, this is the Sparrow Studio Stash Buster series. We normally are piecing quilts. Today we're working on a little bit of machine quilting while my previous quilt gets finished on the long arms upstairs. And hopefully by Friday we will be able to start working on the binding of that quilt. Okay. Wow, it's already noon. So since we are coming to the end already, I didn't even realize I've barely stitched any of this, and I've already been here yapping at you for 90 minutes. Landon is going to choose me 3 winners for the polish. So this is your last chance right now to share that video. I'm going to see if I can get in another row of quilting here. Maybe we'll go over just a little bit today. And I'm going to keep stitching my little cinnamon buns. If this is the first time you're joining us, then hopefully you will take the time to visit the website and see our prior videos and the quilts that we've been working on. The quilt behind me is the next free pattern that we will be offering, and you will be able to watch that starting next week. We'll have another free pattern up on the website available for download, as well as all the videos that teach you how to piece that quilt together. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we also stream live from upstairs in the Long Arm Lounge with our nephew Dylan. He does all the long arming of customer quilts, and so you will have the opportunity to watch and just see how long arming works and what that's all about. We stream live with the Stash Buster series on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and you're more than welcome to join us here at 10:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time until noon each day, and we just have a lot of fun sewing and offering tips and tricks, and we give away some prizes, and hopefully you enjoy that type of thing and you'd be willing to join us. So Landon's holding up her pad of paper here again. So we have some winners who are going to win the little polish kit. So my winner number 1 is Maxine O'Donnell. Congratulations, Maxine. My next winner is Janet Amiot. Congratulations, Janet. And also congratulations to Tammy Palmer. Now, all 3 of you girls, what I need you to do is send us a private message on the page, right to our inbox. You're going to send us your email address, your phone number, and your shipping address. And then we will get this in the mail out to you. I want to thank you all for watching. If you are watching on Facebook, please remember to like us here on Facebook on the Sparrow Quilt Co page and check out our prior videos if this is your first time watching. If you're watching us on YouTube, please remember to subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos. We would hate for you to miss out on anything fabulous that we're doing here at Sparrow Quilt Company. Thanks again for watching, guys. It was a lot of fun today. I cannot believe how little I got done, but... Okay, and just a reminder, next week's quilt that we'll be starting is this quilt behind me. I'm calling it Houndstooth-ish. It's not truly a houndstooth pattern, but it's close enough for me. We'll be sharing that starting next week. On Friday, we'll be back to do the binding on our Stay Centered quilt. I'm going to show you how I prepare my binding and how I attach it by machine. I do not stitch it by hand. That takes too long. So, hopefully we'll see you tomorrow for live streaming from the Long Arm Lounge, and see you again with me on Friday to do our binding on our Stay Centered quilt. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great day, and bye for now.